Welcome back, recruits. I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and today we are going to be talking a little bit more about the Hero Proton Packs. So last time around in part 1, I taught you sort of the anatomy and vocabulary, and now in part 2, I'm going to get a little bit deeper where you can source and buy a lot of these things, as well as the reference material that you can use to sort of figure out exactly which little detail pieces you're looking for. That said, this is definitely a hobby. A couple of pieces of advice. I believe I've already said right up top, my very first piece of advice is always, you know how to eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. Try to break the pack down into as many smaller components as you can and take your time finding and assembling those components. In terms of cost, my first Proton Pack build, my first Hero Pack build took me 3 years, and part of that is because I didn't want to spend all of the money for all of the parts that I was buying all at once. It ended up costing me somewhere in the realm of like $3,500, $4,000 for everything, really.
I had no idea it'd be so much. I won't pay it.
That was 10 years ago.
And that was 10 years ago, and things have only gotten a little bit harder to find and more expensive. So please don't drive yourself into horrible debt to buy up all of the like super high-end, short-term supply, new old stock, vintage, nicest everything that you can on the market right away. It's worth it to take your time and really get to know these things pretty intimately. And often you'll find if you do take your time, that's when you'll find every little detail part that you need. It's not when you're trying to rush everything together all at once.
So pace yourself.
Pace yourself. The way that these builds come together too, if you buy everything at once anyways, you're just gonna end up sitting on a lot of your parts for like 2 years.
But what a ride.
That said, let's show you where to buy these parts.
Because we are focusing on hero packs today, I'm going to just go ahead and start with sort of the basics in regards to the fiberglass shell. The shells that you'll be seeing in our video series that Greg and I are using are going to be these guys, the gbfans.com fiberglass shells. Now, these are sold out. These are gone. I don't believe that AJ will be producing anymore. I bought one shortly before they stopped selling them. Greg got his hands on one secondhand for actually a really incredible deal for it. So those are the shells that you're going to be seeing us using throughout this series. They are both matched with the GB Fans aluminum motherboards. If you are using a fiberglass shell, it's important that you want to match up your motherboard to your shell. By virtue of the casting and molding process, they all kind of have slightly unique footprints on the edges of the shell. Some of that is just like the different people who make and sell these things kind of having slightly different measurements or slightly different disagreements in regards to these things. If you are unable to get your hands on an already matched aluminum motherboard, there are services that you can go through to basically trace the edge of your shell onto a sheet and then have an aluminum motherboard cut for you. That is a little bit more involved, and if you'd like to know more, join our Discord. But basically, you want to make sure that you have an aluminum motherboard that's matched to your fiberglass shell. For the video, Greg and I are using GB Fans. The other big option on the market these days is Max Factory. And Max Factory is a very, very good option simply because it's screen used. What do I mean when I say screen used? When I say screen used, as of Frozen Empire, the Proton Packs used on screen were using Max Factory shells, specifically the Hero Packs. We know this, it's been confirmed, and it's pretty exciting because it means we, the fans, have ready access. The Max Factory shell, screen used, and it is readily available to fans still, which means that we can make some pretty bold claims of having direct screen lineage on our Proton Packs, which is pretty cool if you ask me. That alone makes it worth the price point. You will notice the price point on these fiberglass shells is pretty expensive. So, you know, you're looking at $325 for like the GB fans shell, which to my knowledge is not coming back. That was kind of the best bang for your buck option on the market. For the Max Factory shells, you're looking at $500 to $530. And currently, so that's the other thing with Max, is Max is a little bit more limited in his availability, so you really have to watch his website for when things become available to order. I can say from experience that things go quick. If you're not ready to jump on it right away, things can go very quickly. So it is definitely worth sort of setting that money aside and keeping an eye on the website if something's out of stock when you're ready to order it, because there's a lot of demand for these pack parts from Max, especially because of Frozen Empire. And also, let's be honest, this thing's pretty cool. All right, so just as a quick addendum here, you may have noticed the sudden change in my t-shirt. Shortly after I started to record part 2 with all of the sources where I talked about where to find everything, Redmans Studio Workshop has announced that they too are now producing a Ghostbusters fiberglass shell for the Proton Pack. Now, their shell is specifically derived from the Q-Pack files. So if you're already familiar with the Q-Pack, you're somewhat familiar with the way that Redman's shell is put together. That said, there's a couple of key details to sort of know before you order. The Redman shell is not going to be coming finished. It's not going to be coming in quite the same finished quality that like the GB fans or your Max Factory shells are going to be coming in. So it's going to have a little bit of extra work. You're going to have to cut out your own power cell window. The cyclotron rings are actually separate pieces, so you'll actually, I believe that is part of how he does his lens assembly, though. There's just a few things to kind of be aware of with that specifically. And definitely check it out. Price point is a little high, but that's pretty much what you can expect for a Proton Pack shell these days, especially for a full fiberglass shell like this. So I don't blame you for having sticker shock if you're a little shocked at that $450 price tag. That also is a majority of the shape of your Proton Pack, all in one part, basically. And I still, caveat emptor, I have not had a chance to handle one of the Redman fiberglass shells. Hopefully one day soon I'll get my hands on one of Redman's shells and be able to give you a very informed opinion on the construction of it. Shell and motherboard out of the way. We're looking at basically all of the other parts of the Proton Pack. So like your beam line, your filler tube, your PPD, your booster tube, your ion arm, all of the kind of stuff that attaches to the shell. Now, GB Fans is a really great resource for all of these things. If you go to their shop, actually, let me back up here. If you go to their shop and actually go to pack parts and then down to aluminum parts, they pretty much have all of the parts and options listed right here. There's that, and then also, kind of handily enough, all of those parts kind of come with their own hardware. It's simple hardware. It's all quarter 20, 1 to 4 quarter 20 cap head screws, basically. So you have that as, one really good solid option. Now, if you do get your hands on a GB Fans fiberglass shell like we're using, obviously the GB Fans aluminum parts are going to be made to match up with all of the dimples in the shell. That is something that you will see us refer to and sort of show on camera more and more as the series goes. But there are a series of dimples where all of the parts go, basically. And that's one of the little advantages of using the GB Fans shell, is that it's kind of pre-marked for you for where you need to put your parts. The other option in that regard, though, and once again, we're going right back to Max Factory. I like Max Factory. He is also producing all of the parts. Now, specifically, his shop is much more specifically focused on wand parts. And that is something that we'll get to a little bit later when I start getting into more detail on more all of the different options for those. That said, Max is actively releasing more and more aluminum parts for the Proton Pack, as well as like cast resin parts of different qualities and reference. And also genuinely has some of the best labels on the market. Again, a little bit on the expensive side, but absolutely worth the quality. The quality that you get is absolutely worth that price point, in my opinion. So that really covers a large portion of what goes on the pack. Once again, GB fans, you can get all of your different tubings and like your wire looms. There's 3 or 4 different colored tubings on the pack, and then there's 2 different sizes of wire loom on the pack. There's 1/4 inch and 3/4 inch. The big stuff that, basically the hose from the pack to the wand is 3/4 inch splitless wire loom. Well, so screen accurate. So screen used is split wire loom. I like splitless for the large hose because it gives a little bit of a cleaner look. It's just harder to run wires through. Then you have pieces of 1/4 inch split wire loom on different pieces of tubing on different parts of the pack. There's also ribbon cables, another little holy grail item that people have. So if you were building a Ghostbusters 2 Proton Pack, as Greg is, you can just go right to gbfans.com, and AJ has the exact correct ribbon cable available on sale there for Ghostbusters 2 ribbon cables. It's by far the easiest of the ribbon cables to get a hold of, largely because it is a little bit newer than the original ribbon cable used in Ghostbusters 1. And the Ghostbusters 1 ribbon cable, if you want a vintage ribbon cable, that is a holy grail item. Good luck. I look forward to seeing the results. So those are very difficult to find these days. You can get replicas. There are some very high-end replicas like the Fincher Technologies ribbon cables. That's what we'll be using on my Frozen Empire build. That's what you see on all of the movie-built hero packs, are Fincher Tech cables. And then there are a few other options. We've talked about all these other ribbon cable options on the channel before. That gets us down to more specific details. So, believe people who've been watching our show for a little while now probably realize that we do a lot of our parts shopping on Etsy, both for mod kits and for individual parts. And one of my favorite sellers on Etsy is GBHQ Parts Depot. I really like them because, as you see as I scroll through here, not only does Michael here have like the correct vintage resistors for things like the ion for different parts of the Proton Pack. So like we have all of the resistors that go on the ion arm, and we have a couple of different variations of those resistors for the different packs. So depending on which pack you're building, and as you'll see when we go to the reference library, we have all of these different packs to reference. But depending on which pack you're using as reference, you have slightly different variations of resistors and their arrangement. Same thing with like some of the fittings and stuff. Just very, very, very small detail stuff that if you are trying to get as accurate as possible to a specific reference, I definitely recommend coming here. If you're just looking for a real vintage part that's going to look right, no matter what reference you're using, I would recommend coming here. Not just because he has these vintage parts, but even better, in my opinion, he sells them in these sets. And this is what I really like. He has, if you're building a GB2 pack and you need 3 clip art brass elbows, he sells you lots of 3 for $20. I love that. It's wonderful. I've seen him do it with the resistor sets, doing different sets of resistors. He's got the compression elbows listed that way. It's genuinely one of my favorite things about this shop. and even has front knobs for your ghost trap. Like genuinely one of my favorite Etsy sellers for detail parts. Not just because he has them, he has pretty good deals on them. He sells them in these like pre-arranged sets that I like. Very good option. Once you start getting to this step where you know that you need these clip art elbows, you know that you need these compression elbows, you know that you need this and that. And finally, I think there are lots of sources for the clip arts. We have two different models of clip art that get used on the Proton Pack. We have the R701 and the R330. There's one on the pack and one on the thrower. Now, which one goes where and which ones are used depends on the pack. So if we're looking at the original packs, some of them have 701 valves on both the thrower and the pack. Some of them have a 330 and a 701, etc., etc. That said, these things are still readily available on clipart.com. You can get on Amazon and find them, holy crap, for very expensive. So once again, this is another time where I think GP fans, so you can get these clip art valves pretty much anywhere that you can buy a pneumatic valve part, like you can find them. That said, GB fans, once again, it tends to be the preferred source. Once you know which, if you compared to what they list for on Amazon for $150, you can get an R701 from GB fans for $53. It still sounds a little pricey, but it's genuinely a much better option. As far as actual reference material goes, our two preferred sources are the Ghostbusters Reference Library, the ghostbustersreferencelibrary.com. We'll have a link for that in the description. And our other preferred reference is gbfans.com. So not only do they have the website with all of the shop with everything in it, what they also have, in addition to having the shop, is this. They have the forums. And when you get into the forums and you're trying to learn how to build a prop from Ghostbusters, because we're talking about Proton Packs, I'm looking at Proton Packs here, but specifically, like, the Proton Pack sub-forums is amazing. I quite literally taught myself how to build a Proton Pack by reading this sub-forum, and specifically by reading through this thread, the Proton Pack section index thread. And I just went through and I read everybody's posts about what they did and how they did it and what they used and how they used it, and they kind of taught me everything that I needed. Well, between that and my dad, it taught me everything I needed to know.
So that is more or less where to source a lot, if not quite all, of the parts to your Proton Pack build. I am fully aware that there are a lot of different sources in the community, definitely much more than I just covered, because I really only went into about 2 or 3 major sources in that. That said, a majority of what you'll find are going to be basically either resin cast or 3D printed. And they're very wonderful parts, but they're also not exactly, they would fall more into the category of semi-hero build. So a majority of what we will be focusing on will be the aluminum parts and where to source that sort of thing, which is a kind of a smaller selection in the community these days.
By the end of the day, Chris is going to make sure you buy aluminum.
One of these days, Greg is going to get me a shirt that says, I'm a bad influence.
Yeah, trust me, I've got the side eye for multiple aluminum parts. They are expensive, but they, as Chris assures me, they are worth it.
Yes. We're aware that there are a lot more places to get a lot of these things, and I will generally try to mention some of those options, at least in passing. If you have questions about a source, please leave a comment down below, or join our Discord and join the discussion over there. Once again, gbfans.com. The forums there have a for sale and trade sub-forum where they have a blacklist. So if you are if you're feeling at all cautious about any particular seller in the community, go check that list. Make sure that they haven't been banned from GB fans already, because odds are good that you don't want to work with them if that's the case. Until next time, recruits, I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and we'll see you later.
I have no idea to be so much I won't pay it.